Om Nakradunda Mahakaya Surya Koti Samabhrabha Nirvignam Kuruhe Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Saraswati Namastubhyam Varade Kamarupini Vidyarambham Karishyami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gururdevo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Apara Karuna Sindham Jnanadam Shantarupinam Sri Chandrasekhara Gurum Pranamami Mudanvakam Purneshamatrena Puman Purna Prajayate Tam Bande Brahma Viduryam Sadgurum Chandrasekharam Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahiryam Karavavai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Vidvishavahai Om Shanti 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 Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha
Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha.
Atha Shashtodhyayaha
Atha Shashtodhyayaha.
Arjuna Uvacha
Arjuna Uvacha.
Shloka number 34 Chanchalam Himana Krishna Pramathi Balabhadridham
Chanchalam hi manna Krishna Pramati Labhavatrudam.
Balabhadridham, not Labhavad. Tasyaham Nigraham Hanye Vayoriva Sudushkaram.
Tasyaham nigraham manye vayuriva sudushkaram.
Hey Krishna, we saw the word Vyutpatti of the word Krishna. Jananam Papani Harati, Aharati, Akarshati, removes the Krishna. Manaha Chanchalam, mind is ticklish in nature and it is turbulent. Parmati, Balavad Dridam, it is very Dridam, it is Balavat and Dridam. It is strong and it is rooted in its own ways. That all depends on the depends on how the mind has been used by the person since birth. It's rooted in its way of thinking. Tasya Nigraham is like the Vayu, controlling the wind. This is difficult. So Balavadridam. So that is the meaning we are seeing the shloka. We're going to finish the shloka. So mind is like a Vayu. Mind is like a monkey, therefore difficult to control, difficult to Nigraham. So we'll read from the heading. Stress need not be a factor of agitation. Pramati, Chanchalam. Therefore, to have to do something that with this mind is no small job. Who says Arjuna says, because Manaha Nigraham is difficult. Sudushkaramiti. And he lived in an era where stress was not the concern as it is today, since society was not under so much pressure as it is today. And Arjuna had a lot of leisure and did not have all the hurry that we have today. But still, he had a mind, albeit a very cultured mind that was chanchala. Even though he had leisure, but mind is, he himself says it is chanchala. Then what to talk of the people in modern days, where there is so much pressure, there is no leisure. But still, he had a mind that is chanchala. And if Arjuna's mind was chanchala, you can imagine what the mind of his cousin Duryodhana must have been like. Arjuna, a noble man, his mind itself is chanchala. Relatively pure, you can say. But Duryodhana, yes, always he thinks about Arjuna, the Pandavas, particularly the Bhima. because he had a hatred for them. So Arjuna at least had no conflicts because he did not live a life of adharma. He lived a life of dharma, therefore he had no conflicts. What about Duryodhana? His whole life is full of conflicts since birth onwards. He was rejected, not like Karna, but he was also not cared upon, well cared. That the care did not receive as a child, did not receive the care, that love from the parents because both were blind. His father is blind by birth, but mother, she imposed blindness upon herself. So therefore, there was no one to appreciate Duryodhana as a child, to appreciate, to recognize his skills, to recognize him. So that recognition is missing. So therefore, therefore he sought the help of always. He was always brought up by. He was always with the company of his uncle Shakuni. That is karma. So Arjuna lived a clean life, an unquestionable life, which means that he slept well because he did not nurse any guilt inside. Whereas Duryodhana was Atatai. He had committed all the sixfold crimes. He was a guilty person from head to foot, with all the conflict that goes with the life of adharma. So life of adharma means life of conflicts. Only a person, man of conflict, only will take up the life of, or will lead the life of adharma. A man who has no conflicts, who has no hurt and guilt, why should he take to the life of adharma? And Arjuna being free from hurt and free from guilt. So therefore, he lived a life of dharma, unquestionable, clean life. Arjuna was a man given to a life of dharma, right conduct and right values, and great achievements also. The sense of accomplishments he had. Therefore, there was nothing for him to smart or feel spiteful about. He was successful in all in his pursuits, and a lot of titles showed upon him. He also got Pashupatastra from Lord Shiva. He had the blessing and the grace of all the gods and goddesses and all these great people. In other words, he was a master of his age, a man who on any given day can be proud of his life and his achievements. Everyone in the society looked up to Arjuna, a noble man, even before the great war of Mahabharata took place. So he was a man of great inspiration because of his values. He was a versatile person, a man of music, dance, archery, and other disciplines of knowledge. Not only in warfare, he was also skilled in other arts. So when he lived a life of, when Pandavas lived incognito, Arjuna, because of some curse, he assumed the form of a woman and he is well expert in dance. He taught dance to the princess of the Virata Desha, Uttara. So therefore, all disciplines of knowledge he had. He was a great warrior and also a prince. But even with all these qualifications, Arjuna's mind was chanchalam. His mind itself is chanchalam. Therefore, shows that problem of Arjuna is not only Arjuna's problem; it is universal problem. Therefore, Vyasacharya presents the problem through the mouth of Arjuna here. If Arjuna's mind was nothing but agitation, chanchalam, what about those minds given to the modern phenomenon called stress? Something happens in Iran, and having read about it in the morning paper, you're already upset before you even have your shower. And anyone living in today's world where the input is so much, the globally shrunk, so you get all the information right up on your desk. So the input is so much, therefore can identify with Arjuna's problem as the same question. Chanchalam hi mana Krishna, Pramati Balavadridam, iti. Therefore, the problem is very well known as Shankaracharya also confirms. In Arjuna's time, the question was relevant. In Shankara's time also, it was relevant. And today it is relevant. So it is relevant all the way. In fact, the nature of the mind being what it is, that will be relevant even after 2000 years. So therefore, one has to know the ways of the mind by paying attention to it and gaining certain mastery. If mind is mastered, then everything is mastered. Most of the problems are as though solved. So therefore, since mind is difficult to control, like the Vayu, it's difficult to trap, mind is difficult to trap. Therefore, Arjuna asked this question. And the chapter being Dhyana Yoga, meditation, which involves focusing the mind on the Jayavastu. If mind is not regulated, not controlled, then how can one meditate? One gets frustrated in the seat of meditation. Therefore, Arjuna asks this question, and Bhagavan answers the following shloka. First, he acknowledges what Arjuna has said. So let us read. The next verse, Bhagavan Krishna answers Arjuna's question about how to manage the mind. Shri Bhagavan असंशयं महाभागो मनोदुर्निग्रहं छलम्
असंशयं महाबाहो मनोदुर्निग्रहं छलम्
अभ्यासेन तु कौन्तेय वैराग्येन च गृह्यते
अभ्यासेन तु कौन्तेय वैराग्येन च गृह्यते.
Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. So Bhagavan answers Arjuna's questions. Asamshayam Mahabaho. Manaha Durnigraham. Manaha Nigraham Sudushkaram iti manye, Arjuna said. Bhagavan acknowledges. Yes, Manaha Durnigraham. It is Chalanatmakam. Therefore, Asamshayam, there is no doubt. No doubt with regard to controlling the mind, managing the mind. Because mind is Chanchalatmakam. Chalam. Manaha is Chalam. Chalanatmakam. Chanchalatmakam. Therefore, Tasya Nigraham Durnigraham. Tasya Nigraham Sudushkaram iti Arjuna said. Bhagavan acknowledges, yes, it is Durnigraham, difficult to control. But it is not that it is impossible. It is not that it is impossible, I mean, it's possible. By what? Abhyasa, by practice. Abhyasena tu kaunteya, vairagya, objectivity, dispassion. The nature of the mind is mind flows from one object to other object. But if a person has vairagya, is free from raga and dvesha with regard to the sense objects. By that, when he develops objectivity, dispassion, when he gains a dispassion, so he can withdraw his mind. The sense organs, when he has vairagya, sense organs naturally return back. So therefore, he can withdraw his mind from the external objects. So therefore, vairagya. By vairagya has to be cultivated. Vairagyam. So vairagyena cha krigyate. When there is vairagya and when there is abhyasa, this is possible. To start with vairagya and then practice. Because sense objects attracts the sense organs and therefore the mind. But when the sense organs are withdrawn from the sense objects because of vairagya, understanding the nature of the objects and their anitya, they will not give sukham, permanent sukham. They are bandhakat, but they are the nature of bandhakatvam, they bind. Atriptikaratvam, they will not give the tripti, satisfaction. Knowing the nature of the sense objects, if a person can withdraw the sense organ and along with the mind, this is out of understanding. It is understanding the nature of the Vishaya Sukham, therefore withdrawing with Vishayas. That is called Vairagya. Then by practice, it is possible. Therefore, Vairagyena cha abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha krigyate. Manaha krigyate. Manaha can be mastered, can be brought under one's vasha, one's control by practice and by dispassion, vairagya, objectivity. By objectivity, the mind, the sense organs return back. They will not move towards the sense objects constantly. When a person has likes and dislikes, naturally the sense objects backed up by the mind will be flowing towards the sense object. The person will be extrovert. For mind management, the person has to withdraw the mind, has to be introvert, has to be withdrawn. Therefore, one should have objectivity, dispassion. Translation of the word vairagya is objectivity. Dispassion or objectivity. Objectivity is a better translation. One is objective towards the Vishaya. One doesn't hate. That is objectivity. Understand the nature of the objects, sense objects, that they are anitya, they cannot give trupti, they bind you, in fact. So all these doshas, all these defects are there. So what you seek is not present in the sense of understanding that. What you want is not done in the sense of seeing, that is seeing the absence of what you see. That is objectivity. Be objective. So therefore, by objectivity and by practice abhyasa, the mind can be mastered. Here Bhagavan addresses Arjuna as Mahabaho, O mighty arm. When you can control, when you can fight with enemies and you can subjugate them, why not the mind? Therefore, A Mahabaho, being a great warrior, Arjuna was of course considered to be a mighty one. But his mighty strength should include his mastery over his mind also. Not only it is not only is Mahabaho great warrior with regard to the enemies, with regard to internal enemies also. The extrovert is also an enemy. As in the beginning itself, the sixth chapter beginning, Bhagavan said that the mind which is mastered, Bandhuhu, Bandhuratmanastasya, Yenatmaiva Atmanajitaha, Anatmanastu Shatrute, Bharatetatmaiva Shatruvati. For the one who has mastered oneself by oneself, then one is friend to oneself. Whereas for the one who has not mastered oneself, for him, the self alone acts like an enemy. So therefore, oneself is enemy to oneself if mind is not mastered. So when you can conquer all the external enemies, why not the internal enemies also? As your strength for conquering the external enemies, so you must also develop the strength for conquering the inner enemy. So therefore, his strength is mighty. His might must include his mastery over his mind. One's strength may be useful for knocking the heads of others, but it is not enough to take care of one's own silly mind. Therefore, Bhagavan confirms here by saying, Asamshayam, no doubt with regard to that mind being ficklish, mind being agitated, indicating that there was no doubt that the mind is restless and difficult to master. Sudushkaram. Who says the mind is not restless? Mind is restless only. To recognize that the mind is restless is to have won off the battle. Therefore, Bhagavan acknowledges a problem, therefore, off the battle is won. Suppose someone tells me that his or her mind is agitated, and I say that getting agitated is not good at all, that it doesn't solve anything, and therefore do not get agitated. Then what will happen? Then that will happen. All that will happen is that the person become more agitated because his mind is already agitated. And if you say, then the guilt also develops. The person becomes more agitated. What use of such advice? It is not as though the person wants to get agitated. Therefore, this particular advice is useless. Telling someone not to get agitated doesn't help at all. Telling someone not to get angry, the person is an anger. It's of no use. It doesn't help the person. Whereas if one accepts agitation as the nature of the mind, acknowledging the problem of the battle is won. So acceptance is the first step. For Bhagavan does asamshayam, no doubt, chanchalam manaha. In the program of recovery sponsored by Alcoholics Anonymous, the first step is for the person to say, has to acknowledge that he or she has no power over alcohol. This has to be accepted first. Otherwise, there is no hope of recovery. The same thing is true with everything. not just alcohol. I have no power over anger, acknowledgement. I have no power over this restless mind, acknowledgement. When I accept this, then half the battle is won. Bhagavan accepts this one great psychological, this is psychological fact, truth, psychological fact, that the nature of mind is agitation. One doesn't try to remove the agitation, one simply accepts that it is agitative in nature. Don't get agitated over your agitation, thinking that it is something you are going to solve. It's not only your problem, it is universal problem. So therefore, there is some solace in that also. And also don't think that your mind is something peculiar, because it is not. Any mind is agitation, not only your mind, everybody's mind. Agitation is the nature of the mind, because the mind has to change. The mind, that is how the mind has to be. Mind has to be in constant flux. It is meant to change. It cannot remain stationary. Mind is meant to change. Try to imagine a mind that has a constant thought, and what will happen? Then no new knowledge can take place. Not only new knowledge, you cannot even do any transaction. In all your transactions, you will be held back in your previous transaction. So you will not be able to apply your mind. Mind is fixed to a constant thought. The constant thought means that you cannot see anything else. 10 miles ago, you saw one tree. Still the same tree is in front of you. 10 miles you have traveled. The tree, what you saw, that alone is the mind, and whatever has gone, that will you will not be able to see and appreciate. So what is the use of such mind? Therefore, the nature of the mind is agitation. Nothing else is there. No car, no person, nothing. You would not even survive with such a mind. Therefore, the mind must necessarily change. That is why Bhagavan has intelligently created that mind is of the nature of agitation. It must change. Just as in a movie, the frame must always be changing at a certain speed for you to be able to see objects, movements, etc. Here too, the mind has to keep changing all the time so that you can see. That is why mind is called kshanikam, momentary. No one thought stays for a long time. One particular thought is always kshanika, meaning that doesn't even last for a second. Comes and goes, comes and goes. It is here, now and gone. Now gone. Just to say the word second involves so many parts, so many frames, so many changes, all of which are kshanika. This is the nature of the vritti, the thought. Even to recognize this fact, the mind has to be kshanika. Since the nature of mind is kshanika, naturally it is going to change. Therefore, Bhagavan says there is no doubt about it. Arjuna, the mind is chanchalatmakam manaha, restless. Chala means agitation. And being chala, therefore it is difficult to control. Manaha dur nigraham chalam, he said. In other words, he agrees with what Arjuna had said about the mind, that it is as difficulty to have mastery over the mind as over the wind. Vayogo iva sudushkaram. By repeating what Arjuna had said, is saying that the nature of the mind should be accepted as such. It's a fact. It is accepted. Accepting the fact, accept the fact that the mind is agitation, that has its own rules, that has its own logic. It has its own logic. There is some logic, and even if it is illogic, that is a logic, the thinking, and therefore it is never illogical. It's always logic in the sense mind picks up a thing from a thought and goes to the other thought, and from there it picks up another thing. So it is a sequence, a logicality is there. In the logic, there may be illogic, but mind moving from one thought to another thought, not with disconnectedly. It picks up something and moves from one thought to other thought. Doesn't stay in one thought. We always think that the mind is illogical, but that is not correct. The mind does have its own logic. If we suddenly think of something, we think the thought has come from nowhere. But it has not come from nowhere. It has come from somewhere, meaning that there is some logic for it. But why when nothing has happened outside, when everything is come, do I suddenly have this thought? This simply means that outside situations are not required for a thought to occur. Everything is there inside, the form of memory, chittam. We have enough going on inside for this to happen. Why? For example, in the midst of meditation, do we suddenly think of okras? Okra is lady's finger. And why Why, when I'm talking and wanting to come up with some funny word, this okra come to me? There must be some logic for it. The point is here that whatever suddenly occurs in your head, it has its own logic. Therefore, there is nothing illogical in the world of mind. Therefore, there is nothing logical in this world. There is always some logic. Ordinarily, of course, everything is illogical, but then afterwards, all logical. Within the illogical, we find there is a logic. That is, we understand when something occurs, there is some reason for it. We must understand then that the mind is like this. This is nature. Does this mean I should leave the mind as it is? We could say, yes, the mind is agitation. Forget about it. Don't worry about it. The problem, however, is that when the mind is agitation, not only mind is agitation, I am agitation because I identify with the mind, the state of mind. Therefore, we have to learn to discover the distance between the mind and I. This is the whole trick here, which is why Bhagavan tells Arjuna that the mind can be mastered by practice, abhyasa, and objectivity, vairagya. Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyana cha krigyate. Caring for the child within. By addressing Arjuna here as Kaunteya. Kaunteya is, Kunti is the son, is the mother. So addressing Arjuna as the son of Kunti's mother, the son of Kunti. Krishna is indicating that the child was still there in Arjuna. Arjuna is a child of Kunti. Therefore, the child Arjuna is there, which is where the mind has its own roots. The inner child. This child has to be taken care of. So appropriately Bhagavan addresses E Kaunteya. Why the word Kaunteya is there? Why not Mahabaho? Why not Bharata or Pandava? Why Kaunteya? Because there's inner child. The child has to be taken care of by the person. This is a modern interpretation. Therefore, there is double child care. When you are a child, someone else took care of you. But now you have to take care of your inner child. The first child care is done by one's parents or certain other adults, babysitters. Whereas this child now, even though the person has grown up, the inner child is there, that is must be taken care by the person. Everyone knows as a child inside, but and that child has to be taken care of. Taken care of. Everyone has to do it. There is always a child who was disappointed in his or her perceptions. My mother doesn't like me. My father hates me. There's a sense of rejection, disapproval, non-recognition. So the inner child feels disappointed. These were child's perceptions, not that parents are denied, but this is a perception of the child, inner child. And because of the behavior of the people involved, there's some validity to think so. This is why child remains inside the person. There is always a crying child, a weeping child down below, which is why the mind suddenly takes off, especially when you reach the age of 35 years and over. This is the time that all the disappointment of the child come one by one. All the disappointment of the child one faced that comes out, the person grows old. Again, if you begin to study Vedanta, they all come out. Vedanta is makes it makes it all the more come out. Studying Vedanta means because you are looking at yourself, studying Vedanta. Previously, you are doing other things. Whereas when you study Vedanta, you look at yourself, for all the things come out. Therefore, one must be sufficiently equipped to handle this. Looking at yourself is the first thing that must be done here, which is when the child comes out. So when you look at yourself, then the child comes out. That's the time. So that's why when the person studies Vedanta, all these things will happen. So therefore, the inner child has to be taken care of. When else will this child be taken care of? It has to be taken care of. It has to be addressed. Otherwise, you become 75 years old and you are still a child inside. This then is Arjuna. This then is Bhagavan making here by calling Arjuna Ekunteya. First, he refers to Arjuna as an adult, Mahabaho, and then ask him to take care of his child by addressing him as Kaunteya. He is Mahabaho with regard to external enemies, but with regard to internal, that he has to care as the child, therefore addressing as Kaunteya. Bhagavan tells Arjuna how this is to be done. What are the methods? Saying that by abhyasa, practice and objectivity, dispassion, the mind can be mastered. Abhyasena tu kaunteya, vairagyena cha drigyate. And what is this practice? Abhyasa. The practice is the practice of yoga, dhyanam, just discussed by Bhagavan Krishna, through which a certain distance is gained between your mind and yourself. This distance enables you to look at yourself positively, to see yourself exactly as you are, to see what the nature of I is. In this way, you come to understand that every thought is you, no doubt, but you are free from thought. Every thought is you, but you are not a thought. You are free from thought. Thought comes and goes, and it is not you. So seeing the distance, understanding, appreciating the distance between the thought and you, let the thought not disturb you, because one thought is replaced by another thought, it is constantly changing. Let not a thought disturb you. Just develop a distance. Look at objectively as a witness, as a sakshi. Seeing this particular fact more and more, seeing it inside very clearly, is what is meant by abhyasa. Thought comes, you know, you are the witness of the thought, but thought is not me. The moment you know, it goes away. The next comes, same. So therefore, you create a distance. Let the distance be increased, so that then the thoughts will not disturb you. That is abhyasa. Seeing this particular situation, the thought being I, while I is not any thought, this is what is called nididhyasanam. Thought is I, but I am not the thought. I'm doing the same thing again and again. That's what is called abhyasa. So the seat of meditation, when the person does nididhyasanam, this is what he does, which enables ones to gain mastery over your mind. So abhyasa. Then practice of japa. Japa also helps to gain certain mastery over the mind. The deliberate thing, then a mantra is taken and is repeated, to make the mind focus on the japa. Here the practice abhyasa of japa also can be included, because the mind's nature is not predictable. What your next thought would be, but also it's not predictable. It can be anything. So by the japa, what you do is you take the mantra, simple mantra, and the next thought is you this, the thought with regard to the mantra. Here you deliberately impose a thought. Since the next thought is unpredictable, in japa, what happens? Since the next thought can be anything, since you cannot predict it, what it will be, you create a predictable situation. That is by japa. Then only can you understand how the mind moves. In this way, you get to have certain hold over your mind, or the thinking process itself. That is why the mental repetition of a given mantra, a meaningful name or sentence called japa, is a must and is never given up, even by sannyasi. Japam is important, never given up. Whatever may be the person, grasta or brahmachari or vanaprastha sannyasi, is not given up. It has to be done daily, regularly, at least for some time, half an hour or 1 hour. Mind is like a copper vessel. It gets out easily. It picks up the mental dust. So it has to be washed off. So japa is a good process. It's a purifying process. So japa is a must. The usefulness of a mantra. I think we'll stop here. Usefulness of a mantra will be next class. So for abhyasa, japa is one of the methods. Vairagya, that will be discussed later. Vairagya meaning objectivity. That helps in withdrawal, withdrawing the mind from the sense objects, from the external vishaya, and abhyasa. By this, the mind can be mastered. We will see the usefulness of a mantra next class. So we'll stop here. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Dhanyavada.